Tonight I'd like to talk with you about immigration. Today, our immigration system is broken, and everybody knows it. I committed to fixing this broken immigration system. I know some worry immigration will change the very fabric of who we are.
Throughout the course of history, there's been a flow of Central American immigrants crossing the border illegally into the United States. Many risk their lives as they flee from their country of origin in pursuit of a better life or to be reunited with family members living in the U.S. They also seek to exist in a world where violence is not an everyday occurrence. People living in a country like Honduras are confronted with the everyday horrors of being tortured, abused, and being harassed by gang members. Sadly, these people are mainly children who, without the protection of their parents, tend to suffer a great deal before they reach the United States. As they make the grueling journey toward the U.S.-Mexico border, many of them are subjected to extreme weather, hazardous conditions, kidnapped, raped, and even death. According to United States Border Patrol, apprehension statistics of family units and unaccompanied minors between fiscal years of 2013 and 2014 show that out of 129,809 apprehensions, 40% were citizens of Honduras, while only 15% of citizens were from Mexico. The recent surge of immigrants coming from Central America has caused America to reevaluate their laws on immigration. Our task was to follow several news agencies as they reported information based on the topic of immigration reform.
The United States political situation in the present time revolves around a dispute between the two major political parties about the central government's role in American life. Republicans like a smaller government and with it lower government spending, while Democrats are far more supportive and agree with Obama's most recent changes. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or the press. This being said, doesn't stop the big news agencies from providing news based on their specific agendas, leading to biased or non-biased publications. It's important to discuss the political situation within the regions and their specific limitations to freedom of the press that most certainly alter what information may or may not be reported and published by the news agencies. Mexico's political situation in the present time revolves around a struggle of human rights, corruption within the government, and protecting their borders, while also dealing with the drug war which started in 2006. Mexico's freedom of the press has restrictions, and many of those restrictions come from organized crime syndicates that pressures news agencies to report only what they allow or risk death. Every publication puts the lives of the reporters at risk. The political situation in Honduras revolves around instability, violence, and the need to subsidize and aids from other countries to sustain their population in order to improve. Freedoms of speech and of the press are constitutionally protected. However, killing and intimidation of journalists limits what can truly be published, this being similar to many cities in Mexico.
20 articles were analyzed for this project. These articles were reviewed to answer a specific set of questions, and these questions are as follows. Question 1. How does the coverage of a region or country differ between these publications? In order to answer this question, a list of key phrases was created to increase efficiency. The main ideas for each article were analyzed and compared between our choice of regions, the United States, Mexico, and Honduras. How much space or importance is given to a region compared to other areas? We compared front page news, headlines, and tallied the amount of times immigration reform made it to the front page. What are the main issues being portrayed? We used a series of questions to help determine what issues the article was about. Who is being represented? This question is left towards the end, since it's important to understand portrayal and the importance to truly understand why the organization being represented was chosen by the news agency. What is missing in the coverage? Articles selected were checked for similarities and differences based on the regions. What was most common and least common became a criteria to determine what was missing in the coverage per article. How is the coverage balanced or biased? Viewpoints, main messages, headlines, and themes were analyzed to determine content preference towards immigration reform. Are they for immigration reform or against it? These 6 questions became the criteria for the analysis.
An article from Deadline.com on Obama's immigration speech, CBS, Fox, ABC, and NBC not airing, covers the Big Four's refusal to air President Obama's live speech of his plan to overhaul immigration from the White House on November 20th. PBS, NewsHour, Univision Network, Telemundo, CNN, and sister stations of Fox and NBC, Fox News and MSNBC, did not air the speech. So why is this happening? President Obama believes we must fix our broken immigration system. The Big Four did not air the speech because they intended to keep their regularly scheduled programs. Based on the Big Four's decision to opt out of airing the live speech, there is an obvious form of agenda setting that motivated the Big Four to make this decision. It is evident that News Today is more concerned with entertainment than international news. Although informative, this article fails to explain why the Big Four decided to opt out of airing the 15-minute speech. The coverage on the article is informative and balanced because it does not favor the Big Four's decision to opt out, nor does it favor other networks that did not air the speech. The article remains rather neutral. An article from Pew Research titled Obama's Expected Immigration Action, How Many Would Be Affected, found that millions of undocumented immigrants could be affected by Obama's immigration reform based on previous facts and statistics. The article informs people about the eligibility on Obama's 2014 immigration reform. There are about 11.3 million undocumented immigrants, and not all of them will qualify. This will allow an estimated 4.4 million people who are the parents of U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents who have been in the country for at least 5 years to remain in the country temporarily. This article states that the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program that was a part of Obama's immigration policy of 2012 has already provided temporary relief from deportation. It also elaborates on the 2-year work permit to qualifying young adults ages 15 to 30 who were brought to the U.S. illegally as children. If they do not meet the qualifications, they are deported to their respective country. How is the U.S. responding, you might ask? According to the Pew Research Center, while there are millions that do not meet the requirements who reject the idea, the majority of U.S. public supports some form of legalization for undocumented immigrants. In order to elaborate on the qualifications, let's take a look at the following news clip.
If you've been in America for more than 5 years, if you have children who are American citizens or legal residents, if you register, pass a criminal background check, and you're willing to pay your fair share of taxes, you'll be able to apply to stay in this country temporarily without fear of deportation.
In response to Obama's speech on immigration reform, a new Pew Research analysis says those born in Mexico will benefit more from the new action than those born of any other nationality. 44% of undocumented immigrants from Mexico could apply for deportation protection under the newly implemented programs, in comparison with 24% of those from other parts of the world. Research data from 2012 estimates 3.5 million undocumented immigrant parents with U.S.-born children have lived in the U.S. for at least 5 years or more. They account for the largest group of undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. Although they will receive a 3-year work permit and temporary relief from deportation, this still does not grant them a clear path to citizenship. In addition, Obama's policy changes were also to include immigration enforcement, to focus on recent arrivals and repeat criminal offenders. This is happening because of the recent surge of children crossing into the U.S. illegally. Obama felt that it was time to revisit the laws of immigration and allow undocumented immigrants that have been living in the shadows to get right with the law and be reunited with their families. For those undocumented immigrants that do not qualify for programs, immigration enforcement will apprehend new arrivals and repeat criminal offenders. Although President Obama and supporters are in favor of fixing our broken immigration system, Congress and the general public disapprove of his use of executive action.
Upon analyzing these articles, we realized that news agencies broadcast it to fulfill their individual agendas. Fortunately, the majority of the news sways towards being in favor of immigration reform. New executive action has made 4 million undocumented immigrants eligible for a 3-year work permit and provided a relief from deportation during the remainder of President Barack Obama's term. The recent address also extended DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, by 3 years, from June 15, 2007 to January 1, 2010. This newly revised program allows child immigrants who have crossed the border illegally before January 1, 2010, to be eligible to apply and receive temporary deportation relief. The DACA program has opened the doors for student immigrants. No longer do these students fear being deported while pursuing an education in the United States. Although Obama is in favor of immigration reform, these newly implemented programs do not allow immigrants the opportunity to obtain citizenship through naturalization, nor are they eligible for health care. Coverage from these articles provided information that made us realize that the United States as a core country is expected to take action in solving humanitarian and immigration issues by peripheral nations.